So meet Ambassador Jim Jeffrey, outgoing envoy or ambassador for Syria. He's just revealed that he hid U.S. troop numbers, the real numbers, from President Trump. He said they played a game, more or less of a shell game, shuffling the numbers, hiding the numbers, outright lying about the troop numbers after Trump had directly ordered troop reduction and even troop withdrawal from Syria. This guy is what's known as Deep State. People think Deep State is this dark organization that you'll never see and very nefarious, and part of it probably is all the billionaires and trillionaires that the vandals at the handles, but it's also a big part of it is just the bureaucracy. The people who work in Washington, D.C., the ambassadors, people in the military, people in the intelligence services, they're doing their own thing. Think about it. The average politician, especially president, maximum 8 years. In Trump's case, maybe only 4. These people are career bureaucrats, career ladder climbers. They're in their job possibly 20, 30, 40 years even. Look at Joe Biden. He's been running for office or in office for something like 50 years now, I think. Ever since 10 years after the revolution, something like that. So this is what happens. Trump is trying to get the troops out of these foreign wars, especially these Middle Eastern, Afghanistan. People like this standing in the way. They know what's best. They know what the country really needs. They weren't elected, they were appointed by elected presidents for what we call elected today. But this guy knows better. And this is what happens. They don't serve the people. They don't really serve the president. They serve the military-industrial complex. They serve the corporatocracy. And unless the president goes along with that, well, if the president does go along with it, then they'll probably tell him the truth. If you have a president like Trump, who doesn't want to go along with that necessarily, then they won't tell the truth. So, I don't know what you want to call this. Betrayal? Treason? Obviously lying. Is it a crime? I don't know. I'm not a law doctor. But I think this guy should be charged with something. How can you lie to the president after he gives you directives like that? How can you deceive like that in your job? And I think this is one of the things that Trump failed to do after he was elected in 2016 and came into office in 2017. He did not clean house. And I think part of the reason that he was already accused of being a Russian agent in that ridiculous Russiagate, and he felt maybe constrained. Every time he tried to remove someone or change someone, they accused him of working for the Russians, undermining security, going against the Constitution. Look what they did to, Michael Flynn and General Flynn. All those people came after them. So Mr. Ambassador Jeffrey here led Trump to believe through lies and deception that there were around 200 troops left in Syria after the defeat of ISIS. Now, after the defeat of ISIS, Trump was clear he wanted out of Syria. But Mr. Jeffrey says they came up with at least 5 different ways, many different plans to keep the troops in there. Not only keep the troops in there, but to lie about the actual numbers. So, if you can't trust your ambassadors, and this goes back to house cleaning again, one of the biggest mistakes Trump made was not to clean house, to completely clean out everyone, basically everyone who was ever appointed by Obama. The people appointed by Obama are hardcore loyalists to the Democrat Party, and they are never Trumpers. They despise Trump, and this is what happens. Now you imagine this going, the State Department, the Defense Department, the intelligence services, the general bureaucracy, and you have hundreds, dozens, maybe thousands of people just like Mr. Jeffrey who are not doing their job in good faith. They're doing their job in a way that will help get rid of Trump. So, yeah, will this guy be prosecuted? Probably not. Looks like Biden won. This will all be just shuffled and under the rug, shoved under the rug, swept under the rug, and forgotten. So now let's meet a real princess, Liz Sly, who describes herself as the Washington Post bureau chief for Syria, Iraq, Beirut, whatever, and other parts of the Middle East. So she's the bureau chief for the Washington Post. But being a correspondent or a journalist these days doesn't really mean much, because all you are is a mouthpiece. Washington Post, owned by Jeff Bezos, have a contract with the CIA, $600 million or something like that. So basically, the Washington Post, Jeff Bezos, Liz Sly are the state. One and the same. They don't report, they repeat. They're talking heads or ghost writers for the state, whatever you want to call it, if you're a journalist or a correspondent. But she's having a good laugh. She thinks it's funny that Trump thinks there's only 200 troops in Syria. She thinks that's kind of amusing. She later goes on to say that she doesn't really think it's funny. She thinks it's sad. But I'm sure she finds it very funny that Donald Trump got lied to by his own people, his own staff. So yeah, that's the state of journalism. I'd like to ask Miss Liz Sly, or Mrs. whatever she is, if you're a so-called bureau chief and journalist and you're responsible for Syria for the Washington Post, where's the investigative journalism? Where was the digging down to find out exactly what was going on in Syria? No reporting on that? No investigations? No, you sat there, wherever you sit, and you got media handouts from the Pentagon and the CIA and other people, and you just printed them. That's what you do. And of course the Democrat Party. It's all the same thing these days. So yeah, got a real stand-up journalist there. Liz Sly. Pretty sly, I would say. Ever paid attention to is the New York Times or the Washington Post or CNN or MSNBC, then of course you think Trump is a racist, a fascist, maybe even Adolf Hitler. Just as an aside, the Washington Post, owned by Jeff Bezos, has a $600 million contract with the CIA, something like $600 million. So it's essentially an arm of the state. It's a propaganda outfit of the state. So Miss Liz Sly works for a propaganda unit of the CIA, essentially. So, but the reality is, Trump has been very proactive in peace. He was the first sitting president to cross into North Korea, to meet Kim Jong-un, to make peace initiatives with North Korea. He also orchestrated peace deals between Israel and Sudan, Israel and Bahrain, and Israel and the United Arab Emirates, not to mention between Serbia and Kosovo. So Trump has been very active on the peace front, even though he's been interfered with every step of the way by people who just want to prolong war. That's essentially what it boils down to. The state. The state exists to perpetuate itself. And if you're the president and you get in the way, then so be it. And that is essentially what happened with this past election. You might have noticed that the press was never favorable for Trump, but especially during the election. Now when Trump is trying to fight a few legal battles, it's a coup. In 2016, it was all about Russiagate, Russian interference. The Democrats lost because of Russian interference. Now, where's the screaming about Russia? Where's the new Russiagate? Obviously, Russians helped Biden win, or China helped Biden win. Isn't that obvious? It all disappeared. Now Trump's committing a coup. Trump's trying to orchestrate a coup because he He sees fraud, he senses fraud, he probably knows there's fraud from his advisors, and he wants to do something about it legally, but even his defense teams, his lawyers, are being attacked by the Lincoln Project and other people. So don't believe a word you see in the mainstream media. Even Fox News now is not so reliable. And you're just going to have to search out there for slightly more objective sources. But yeah, I think Trump, he never really had a presidency. His whole 4 years, he was hobbled by Russiagate and accusations of being a Russian agent, which are just ridiculous. Everybody knows it's ridiculous. Even the Democrats know it's ridiculous. And I think in 5 years, 10 years, it's going to be looked back on as a childish, ridiculous, silly thing. And I don't know how Trump's going to be remembered. Maybe it'll be like George Bush W, who remembered fondly now, even though he started all those wars in the Middle East. But I don't know if Trump's going to be remembered fondly at all. There's so much hatred for Trump. Even though he tried to do many good things, he did do many good things with the peace deals. He kickstarted the economy again until COVID showed up. And you might have noticed that it was the Democrat states who really cracked down and hurt the economy with these lockdowns during COVID. Anyway, I don't know. This is just a brief roundup of what I see. It's not very nice. And I hope there are some charges coming for this envoy, Mr. Jim Jeffrey and other people, because I don't see how you can do a job like that and escape some kind of punishment or charges, something like that. As I said, I'm not a lawyer. Anyway, that's all I got. See ya.